Hello, possums. How are you paddling? Stay strong in the face of the madness. Something I'd like to just sort of talk about for a minute before I get into this vid, which is basically about July. But there's, of course, some major happenings to discuss first, not the least of which is NATO, right? So having single-handedly dismantled the Western alliance, the Yeti, people thought it couldn't be done over two generations, but no, he's done it in 3 months. But when you look at him in relation to other global leaders, it's obvious he's losing power and it's dribbling out of his shorts. First of all, you had the G7, where I'm sure they all took bets, how soon will it be before he has a tantrum and leaves? Well, wasn't long. So that was the G7 that just went on without him. It may as well now be the G6. Now, with NATO, of course, the NATO meeting followed immediately from the strikes in Iran, and he was completely ill-equipped for dealing with international reporters. Because not only did they want to know the dimensions of the strikes and stuff, they wanted to know the relationship between Israel and the United States, who was serving who in what context, and what does this mean going forward? And he was completely at sea. So he goes back to what he does best. He abuses the journalists. Well, they don't take it like American journalists do. Instead, they went back and wrote about him in various ways and various languages, saying it is obviously the man is a thug, a moron, and a danger to the world. And I know this from my household because there's three of us in this house, and we have divided up into news zones. So one of my flatmates is a French speaker and an Indonesian speaker, so she lets me know what's happening in Europe and Southeast Asia and so on. We divvy up the world. And people are astonished, particularly after the political assassination, where the woman and her husband were shot dead in their own homes, and said, not being mentioned. The rest of the world cannot believe it didn't even make it through a news cycle. Right. So he's losing power all round. Okay. But just like a drunk at closing time, he stumbled in front of a news posse last night, or he didn't, it was actually Lutnick and someone else, saying there's going to be a deal with China, where, this China trade deal, China. Talk about concept of a plan. There's a framework for a conversation. Now, China's very smart. They play the long game always, and a long game in Yeti world can be 2 weeks, 2 months. So you don't even have to be particularly committed. So I'm just going to have a quick look at what that means because it impacts everything. Because as we know, Nike, everyone produces their goods in China, if not Indonesia, Bangladesh, and so forth. So China being the big one, will there actually be a deal? We actually see a deal. Have a look. Oh, no. Oh dear, you gotta love the cards. Look at this. Now, for those of you learning tarot, three major arcanas and a queen. That's shorthand for big story. Right? The Queen of Wands, who is quite entrepreneurial by nature, I think this represents China in this context, staying calm, staying cool. It's like letting the 2-year-old play out the tantrum and just walking away yourself or something. There's a detachment, is what I'm trying to say. China's very detached from this, even though I'm sure they're seething in economic terms. Let's not pretend it doesn't have an immense economic impact on China. But this is the calmness. This is what America used to be before January 2025. You remember America when it was, whatever it was. I've often said on this channel, we romanticize history, and you could talk for 6 hours about the things that weren't marvelous prior to him taking the helm, for sure. But this is more symbolic. This is when um, American trade was what drove the world because of the reserve currency. This was America's star. The star hasn't just dimmed in this process. This impacts us a lot in Australia too, because we're extremely vulnerable to what China decides to do. It is our major trading partner, so that can be good tick. On the other hand, should China decide to be more aggressive towards Australia, we would be sunk, without the protection of other countries, etc. So we in Australia are extremely vulnerable to what's happening with China. However, look at this. That's the Yeti being trampled by the Grim Reaper, literally. Yes, there will be new deals, brand new deals, but it's the fool. China will China will play him. So he'll come out and make announcements. There's this big, wonderful new deal with China, which will take us back to where we were before he started the tariff nightmare. The fool. I mean, these cards actually should be on Blue Sky or something, this particular combination of four cards. That sums it. Now, speaking of the economy, I hope you guys have discovered the Australian economist Justin Wolfer. He has been a professor of economics, I think in Massachusetts or somewhere for years. He uses we when he's talking about America. That's most disconcerting when he's got an accent like mine. But he calls it like he is. So if you don't know who I'm talking about, Justin Wolfer, he reduces all this complex stuff into a few pithy sentences. And suddenly he's everywhere. He's the new golden boy. Okay, so before I get on to July, hasn't been a good week for billionaires, has it? Bezos's wedding in Venice has not been popular with Venetians. So apart from threatening inflatable crocodiles in the canals, I love that idea. But there were protests, and the most used sign was if you can afford to rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax. I thought that was a pithy slogan. Mm. So, yes, and also SpaceX, another space crash. See, apart from everything else, the muskrat is never held accountable for the damage his crashed rockets do, and apparently the impact on marine life in an already tricky domain is considerable. But things haven't been rosy for Elon, so we can take some sort of Schadenfreude pleasure in all this. So let's move on. Oh, one more awful, awful thing, but we've got to be realistic about awful things. Bad enough they're cutting money to FEMA, but because they've spewed such misinformation, did you hear that in North Carolina, as emergency workers were trying to, cut people out of vehicles and helicopter people to hospitals and stuff, they were bailed up by a militia of Trumpites, seriously bailed up and threatened, and they had to leave. Questions were asked, where are you staying? Meaning, look out tonight. That's disgusting. And the West is very quick to criticize other countries in Latin America or Sudan for having these out of control gangs and to, no, no, not good enough. And I'm not seeing pushback. Now, oh, the other joy and delight was the mayoral candidate Zoran Mandani doing really well as a democratic socialist and saying it out loud. Wow. And you can imagine the money that was put against his campaign. It's getting to a stage, see, this is the upside for the US. By screwing people down, as was the norm, and then screwing them again and more with the tariffs, and then more because even though the price of oil has dropped because the war doesn't seem to be going on straight away, it that will go up. It always goes up, never goes down. So people are beginning to join the dots. And I think you can just forget the MAGA files and move on. And can you imagine? You might end up accidentally with universal healthcare. Don't think it's immediately likely, but it's interesting. People are no longer running away from the S word. So they're doing well. Okay, focus, Lena. July. First week of July, three of these cards for each week. These are my own deck, One World Tarot, and three of the Governance Oracle. Three cards fell out. Okay, that's a bit spooky. All right, let's have a look. It's a rare event. How weird. I just had three cards and three cards went. Psh. Now, week one, July. Here we go. Oh, there were four cards. Oh, the cards are playing games. Look at this. Okay, so I'll just hold them up for you. And because I've been raving on, I might just pull the cards and do it quicker. Okay, so Two of Wands for week one, July. Two of Wands making a plan. I think this is actually about the budget, the big butch bitch bill, right? Not going well in the Senate. Okay, so making a plan that involves the King of Pentacles symbolically, it's like everyone's wounded by it because you've got these truly ghastly people who are saying, I will not vote for this bill. It is not cruel enough. It's bizarre. So it's being debated by the vicious and the vacuous, and everyone is wounded by it, right? No one's getting what they want. And you might be astonished to know Susan from Maine, what is wrong with that woman? She can never make up her mind, Susan Collins, to the last minute and then never fails to make a crap decision. So she's not sure at this stage about the bill. How could you be not sure? She gets paid. I can't believe it. End of week one, hold on to your money. Now, in the interest of time, I'm only going to pull one of these governance oracles for each week. So be careful with your money. That keeps coming up, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. So week one, July, week one, July, week one, July. What have we got? Economic challenge. Economic challenge. Now, this would be, I would suggest, the panic before July 9, which we'll do in a second, because that's when the evil tariffs are going to be officially launched. They haven't even really started. And of course, the White House claims billions, untold billions coming in, flowing into their coffers. They fail to finish the sentence by saying, from you paying what in the UK is a VAT, value added tax, or GST, tax, it's an extra tax on you for every umbrella, t-shirt, food item, bit of Manchester, vehicles, everything. Okay, week two, Lena. Focus. Week two. Okay, I'm just going to put them down, then I'll hold them up for you. King of Pentacles came up again. Quelle surprise. Right. Week two, we're going to see more court cases. The Supreme Court is making us seasick with, you know, their weird um, decisions that are so indecisive. They're either awful or they're indecisive. And I think we're going to see more in week two, a substantial legal ruling. Now, will we not like it or will he not like it? I suspect in a way it might be something he doesn't like because there's all this stuff going on at the moment about birthright citizenship. And instead of the Supreme Court smacking it down and having his car towed away, no, well, so they gave him what he wanted, it sounds to me, but at the same time, there was sort of code out of Amy Coney Barrett's mouth saying, well, but perhaps if it was a class action, we'd have to look at it differently. So exhausting, isn't it? Okay, week two. Week two. What did I get? Good intentions. I think this is I think people trying to make sense of what is going on and um, trying to keep doing the right thing. But the problem is everything is sabotage. Like the floor is literally cut out underneath by these tariffs. I'm surprised we didn't get more money cards for week two, but we've got the rest of July to go. So good intentions could also cover health issues, like if you were having a drink with RFK Jr., heaven forbid that nightmare should ever occur, he would say he has good intentions for the health of America, right? Despite the fact it's obvious polio is going to come back, TB is going to come back, everything's going to come back. Misplaced good intentions. So something that sounded as if it was going to be good isn't. Okay. Now, week three, bear in mind, I'm not the sort of reader who specializes in weather events. So given that it's summer, and so there are other readers who are really good on weather, but it's not my forte. Let's have a look. So, and then I'll have a quick look at the No Kings protest on its own. Week three. Ooh, I'll show you in a moment. All right, four cards I pulled in. Something that's been established as a partnership is going to break down. I think this might be the collapse of the bill. They can't quite get it through. So there's going to work together to try and push it through. But I'm not convinced it'll get there eventually because politically they simply haven't got the balls to stand up to the Yeti. So a twisted, jaundiced version will go through at some point, but not then. Defend. Be prepared for defense in the sense of defending what is right, defending what are real values. Week 3. So let's have a look here. Week 3, July. Week 3, July. Week 3, July. What have we got? Can't read it backwards. Market volatility. Hmm. So that's a week after the tariffs have kicked in. Oh, I think what that defense is too, it can go both ways. It can be you guys or us in the world having to defend, but they will have to defend these tariffs big time. That is going to set the markets off in week 3. All right. Week 4. All right. It's funny that everything's coming up money, is that? It's probably not surprising. Week 4, July. Oh, look at this. Twitterverse is going to go berserk. I think it's going to turn. It's even turned on Elon. I don't know if you caught this during the week. He hates Grok now, his own AI thing, because Grok said, when asked, the right is much more violent and deadly than the left. So he was saying, oh, there's something wrong with the algorithm. So, yeah, he's such a child. Something's going to explode week 4 in Twitterverse. And that, of course, includes Blue Sky and every other platform, podcasts and stuff. About an act of the mercenary, I mean, how could you choose one? But it's going to be so bad, it's actually going to stand out. And the false messaging will be exposed. Week 4. Ooh, one look. Let's have a look. Week 4, the governance oracle. The woman who makes these is an Australian. We're doing well. We're punching above our weight. Trish James. Jaimes. They're such fun. Okay, week 4. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Mounting tensions. And I think that's could be international, but it could also be the tariffs are starting to kick in. How are we going to spin this? I think this is a dilemma. How on earth are we going to spin it? Oh my God. But look, I've run out of time, so next vid we'll focus on no kings. Now, guys, I love you so much. How much? So much. Okay. So look after yourself and be kind. Kindness is its own reward. Okay. Let me know what you're thinking about in the comments. Cheers.